Pantone number 23.
Hello, my name is Nenapha number 25.
My name is ญยาณ กษาวง number 28.
My name is นพมาศ ชัยต้นเชื้อ number 29.
My name is อักษรสิงห์กร number 32.
Hello, my name is Thanaphor number 33. Hello, my name is ญยาณ พวงแก number 33.
Hello, my name is นางสาวนิธิอาคารากูล number 36.
My name is พลอย สามกร number 42.
My name is อวิกา นิตราม number 44.
Once upon a time, in a great castle, a prince's daughter grew up happy and contented. In spite of a jealous stepmother, she was very pretty, with blue eyes and long black hair. Her skin was delicate and fair, and so she was called Snow White. Everyone was quite sure she would become very beautiful. Thought her stepmother was a wicked woman. She too was very beautiful.
Who is the loveliest lady in the land?
The reply was always,
You are Your Majesty.
until the dreadful day when she heard it say,
Snow White is the loveliest in the land.
the stepmother was furious and wild with jealousy. Calling one of her trusty servants, she bribed him with a rich reward to take Snow White into the forest, far away from the castle. Then, unseen, he was to put her to death. The servant, attracted to the reward, agreed to do this deed, and he led the innocent girl away. However, when they came to the fatal spot, the man's courage failed him, and leaving Snow White sitting beside a tree, he mumbled an excuse and ran off. Snow White was all alone in the forest. Night came, but the servant did not return. Snow White, alone in the dark forest, began to cry bitterly. She thought she could feel terrible eyes spying on her, and she heard strange sounds and rustling that made her heart thump. At last, overcome by tiredness, she fell asleep curled under a tree. Snow White slept fitfully, wakening from time to time, with a start and staring into the darkness round her. Several times she thought she felt something or somebody touched her as she slept. At last, dawn woke the forest to the song of the birds, and Snow White too awoke. A whole world was stirring to life, and the little girl was glad to see how silly her fears had been. As she tried to find out where she was, she came upon a path. She walked along it hopefully, and she walked till she came to a clear place. There stood a strange cottage with a tiny door, tiny windows, and a tiny chimney pot. Everything about the cottage was much tinier than it ought to be. Snow White pushed the door open.
I wonder who lives here.
She said to herself, peeping round the kitchen.
There is a seven of them.
Upstairs was a bedroom with 7 neat little beds. Snow White had an idea.
I will make something to eat when they come back home.
Toward dusk, 7 tiny men marched homeward singing. But when they opened the door, to their surprise, they found a bowl of hot steaming soup on the table, and the whole house spick and span. Upstairs was Snow White, fast asleep on one of the beds. The chief dwarf got her attention. Who are you? He asked. Snow White told them her sad story, and tears sprang to the dwarf's eyes. Then one of them said, as he noisily blew his nose, they cheered, dancing joyfully round the little girl. The dwarf said to Snow White,
Come here and tend to house why we down the mine.
Thinking about your stepmother living in the forest.
We love you and we will take care of you.
Snow White gratefully accepted their hospitality, and next morning the dwarfs set off for work, but they warned Snow White not to open the door to strangers. Meanwhile, the servant had returned to the castle with the heart of Rhodia. He gave it to the cruel stepmother. The stepmother turned again to the magic mirror, but her hopes were dashed, for the mirror replied,
The loveliest in the land is still Snow White, who lived in the seven dwarfs' cottage down in the forest.
The stepmother was beside herself with rage.
She must die.
She screamed, casting herself as an old peasant woman. She put a poisoned apple with the other in her basket. Then, taking the quickest way into the forest, she crossed the swamp at the edge of the trees. She reached the bank unseen. Just as Snow White stood waving goodbye to the seven dwarfs on their way to the mine. Snow White was in the kitchen when she heard the sound at the door. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
She called suspiciously, remembering the dwarf
I'm an old peasant woman selling apples.
came the reply.
I don't need any apples. Thank you.
She replied,
But they are beautiful apples and every so jealous.
say the faculty, voice from outside the door.
Open up to stranger.
And as a reward for being good, I'm going to make you a gift of one of my apples.
Snow White opened the door, just a tiny crack to take the apple. Ding, ding.
Oh, it's not my apples.
Snow White bit into the first and as she did, fell to the ground in a fear sucking evilly. The weak stepmother hurried off, but as she ran back across the swamp, she tripped and fell into the quicksand. No one heard her cries for help, and she disappeared without a trace. Dwarf came out of the mine to find the sky had grown dark and stormy. Loud thunder echoed through the valley and strikes of lightning ripped the sky. Worried about Snow White, they ran as quickly as they could down the mountain to the cottage. There, they found Snow White laying still and lifeless, the poisoned apple by her side. They did their best to bring her round, but it was no use. They wept and wept for a long time. Then they laid her on a bed of rose petals, carried her into the forest and put her in crystal coffins. Each day they laid a flower there. Then at evening they discovered a strange young man admiring Snow White's lovely face through the glass. After listening to the story, the prince made a suggestion.
To make her to the castle. I called in famous doctor to waking her from this peculiar sleep. She's so lovely. I love to kiss her.
He did. Snow White opened her eyes.
Oh,
The prince asked Snow White to marry him. From that day on, Snow White lived happily in a great castle. But from time to time, she was gone back to visit the little cottage down in the forest.